pick something. If you're unfamiliar and is just now getting into it, do something as simple as just step on the scale every day and walk in the gym every day. Do that. Don't think about anything else. Everything else will come. Measure something monthly. A month is about enough time for you to figure out if something is working or not working for you. And sometimes just the act of recording something changes the behavior subconsciously. Just writing down what you're eating, maybe not even the calorie count or the macros, anything. Just writing down what you're eating makes you more conscious of your behavior. And that can happen subliminally. So track something.
Yeah! What's up, everybody? Your life alchemist, your dragon. Welcome to Fit Rich Life. I'm your host, Justin David Carl. This is a show where I seek out and share expertise, wisdom, and thought leadership in all domains with the mission of empowering and inspiring you to proactively design and truly live a life worth living. We're all in this together, and when we do the work together, we go so much farther, so much faster, and have so much more fun. Without further ado, let's dig into this episode and proactively build your Fit Rich life. All right, everybody. This is the first official recording of the newly rebranded, renamed, rebirthed podcast, Fit Rich Life, formerly Alchemized Life. And I have my good friend, David Baughier, on the show with me. He's financially independent. He's the founder of a great website all about financial independence called Fiology. And welcome to the show, brother. So good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been a while since we've spoken, but you did come visit me maybe a year and a half ago. And even to this day, my son still talks about the dragon. So you definitely made an impact, but we had a lot of fun that visit. Remember, you texted me ahead of time and you're like, hey, you got some room in your fridge? And it's just me. So I usually do have a little bit of room in my fridge. I'm fairly efficient, but I didn't know what to expect until you brought 14 coolers of food into my house. And basically I had to use one of your coolers while you filled up my fridge with all of your organic bags from Trader Joe's. That was an experience that has never happened to me before. And it probably will never happen again unless you come back to visit.
Oh, it's going to happen again.
But it was impressive how you prioritized your well-being with food in particular. And of course, people who know you know that you're also very fit and low percent body fat, all of those good things. And that doesn't come without a lot of personal reflection and really understanding and shaping your habits. So you've done a great job in that. But I had just had a lot of fun while you were here. We worked out together. I think we even promoted some of your products with my trainer. At the time I was hitting pretty hard and looking pretty good. So I was able to take off my shirt out without too much embarrassment. But we had a good time. I remember we walked on the beach. You were sprinting. I was limping behind you, trying to keep up. But overall, it was really, really great to have you here. And I look forward to our next visit.
Yeah, that was actually my first time to San Diego, and it was super memorable because I got to meet up with you and another one of my good friends. It's funny because both of you were it was the first time I'd ever met with you guys in person. We had been online friends, you and Brian Turner, and that was my first trip to San Diego, and I'll never forget it because I had so much fun with you. I really appreciate you letting me stay at your place and completely take over your fridge. People are always surprised when they see how I really eat in real life because I eat these insanely large dragon bowls, which you got to witness. And I really appreciate you showing me all the beaches. We did some epic hiking. And the weather was incredible. It was November, but we were out hiking shirtless and, running on the beach. And it was just an experience, a trip that I'm never going to forget. So definitely going to come back again in the near future. Now, especially since you live super close to the beach. So make some room in your fridge for me, brother.
I just have to buy a second fridge for you and just name it Justin's Fridge.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, the reason I really wanted to have you on the show, is kind of threefold. One, I really want to cover your journey to financial independence because of your particular background and how you got there. I also want to cover the kind of post-FI journey that you've been on for the last 2 years. So you've officially been not working and just living off all of your investments and whatnot for the last 2 years. So I want to talk to you about that. And then you also really went through, especially when I was joining you, you're like deep in your like fitness journey. And I just want to kind of, dive into that. So to kind of get us kicked off with that, like start telling us about how you got into financial independence and kind of like, how all that happened.
Yeah, so I'll start with the broad strokes. 45 now. I retired officially from the military 2 years ago. I was 43. And prior to that, spent 20 years in the Navy as a naval officer. And it was pretty arduous, many, many times being gone and somewhat stressful, but there were also jobs that were pretty good for quality of life as well. So overall, whether you're corporate or whether you're military, you've got good days and bad days. And we definitely had some of those, but time doesn't slow down for anyone. And 20 years comes and goes pretty fast. In hindsight, sometimes it can feel like it's taken forever to get there, but it does come. And those who stay in the military long enough and can deal with some of the challenges that are in it do get a pension. And that definitely helps support financial independence. During that role or during that time period, I did invest in some rental properties, which I still own. And that's also providing me some income now. I got into financial independence and money just in general much younger. I remember reading probably late teens or early 20s, two particularly good books. The first one was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I'm sure most of your audience is familiar with. It's a very popular book, and we can debate whether or not the stories in it are actually real or not, but I do credit it to really motivating me to learn more about money and finance and really see the world a little bit differently as far as business versus want or desires. And then the follow-on books and that the purple series of books, his advisors, the cash flow quadrant after that. And it just really gave a framework to how to see assets and how to use those assets to represent a lifestyle of living. And I'm not talking about being exorbitant. I don't live a particularly lavish lifestyle, but I am able to pay the bills and I am comfortable. So that's the ultimate goal. And then the second book was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I tried it, weirdly enough, you read books at different points in your life and they have different impacts. I tried to reread that one recently and it didn't really hit as hard, but I do credit those two books as really, really propelling my motivation to learn more and read more. And then, of course, throughout 20s, Rick Edelman and Susie Orman and many of the gurus. But it wasn't until later in my career, probably my 15, 16-year mark, when my brother introduced me to Mr. Money Mustache. And I know there's many podcast guests that say that, and that just goes to show you the impact that he has had on so many people. Very clear, concise, logical presentation of messaging, and that really hit home. So my brother invited me to an event called Camp Mustache, and that was in Seattle, Washington at the time. I believe it was 2016. And my daughter and I went, and my brother, he was there, of course, my twin brother, Steven. We could probably talk about him in a minute too. He's also got his feet firmly in the foundations of the financial independence community. And it was a really, really good event. I mean, people were open, they were generous, they were honest, they shared their knowledge. They're not selling you anything. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits and maybe ironies is that there's a huge group of people out there who's trying to build their net worth rapidly and quickly. And you would think they're trying to sell something so that they can get there faster, but they're not. They're also the most generous group of people I've ever met. And they've helped me. I actually met my first mentor, or my primary mentor, Doug Nordman, at that event. He was a military, and he retired I'm not sure how long he was in, but he retired in 2001, and he's lived in Oahu, and he helps educate just about everybody. And you don't have to be military to get an education from this guy. You send him one question, he'll respond very thorough with multiple paragraphs of information, and he's not alone. Like there's so many, he's not an oddity. There's so many people in the financial independence community just like that, willing to help. So for your listeners who might not be that familiar with financial independence, then just know that the water's nice. Come on in, everybody's welcoming.
Yeah, 100%. Couple questions there. Just for those, because this is really the first time I've talked about a pension on the show. Can you explain kind of how a pension works and like what it is and, what the benefits and downfalls of it are?
Sure. So I can speak to the military pension. I do know corporate pensions are unique to whatever company and whatever. There's a lot of different nuances in corporate pensions, and let's do some homework here. But I think there's a Maximus. There's a site out there. I'll try to send it to you after the show. But he focuses on pensions. He's ex-military, but his niche in the financial independence community is pensions. So that would be a resource for viewers who want to learn more about that. Regarding the military pension, how that works is you don't get it unless you stay in for at least 20 years. That's enlisted or officer. And what the amount is based on is you get it when you're active duty military, you have different pays. You've got a basic pay, which is based on rank and time and grade or time in the military. And then you've got like housing allowances, basic allowance for sustenance, and that's for food. And that's just usually like a couple $100s a month. But all those little things do not go into the calculation of your pension. The only thing that counts towards your pension is your basic pay. And there are 2 programs now. The military shifted whenever, a few years ago, I think it was 2018, they rolled out a BRS, which is the blended retirement system. So if you were to join now, or your children were to join now, that's the system that they would be in. So it's slightly different than mine, which is based on, it's called a high 3, which is 50% of the average of your 3 highest years. And it's usually the last 3 years of your career. So generally it's 50% of your base pay at the time of retirement. And for the blended retirement system, they do some matching in a 401k style. We have something called thrift savings plan. And that's very much, the rules are very much like a 401k. But for my generation of people that were in the military, they did no matching. Now, for people who are 2018 and later, they get matching up to a point similar to a corporate 401k. And I won't get into the details of that, but it's up to 3 and 4%. Over time, there's vested and there's all that. There's nuances there. But it's a good deal because that little matching over time, especially if you stay in for 20, you've not only got a very nice 401k or thrift savings plan balance there to help you in that next phase of life, but you do still get a pension. But instead of being 50% of your basic pay, it's 40% of your base pay. But for me, my pension is 50% of my basic pay, and it comes out to about just under $5,000 a month before taxes. And then taxes hits, and then it's a whole different story. But yeah.
Now, does it get taxed like similar to me? You live in California.
Normal income.
Okay. Well, we pay for that sunshine here.
We do.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So
especially after you've had such an unusually cool winter, everybody's like, come on, I'm paying the taxes. Where's the sun?
Seriously.
Get out already.
It's literally been like, I moved to Santa Cruz in September, and then this winter, like there's been floods and like the most rain I've ever seen in the Bay Area, like in the entire time that I've lived here. And I've lived here for many, many, many years, like over a decade in combined years at this point. So ready for spring. Awesome. So question, why did you join the military? Like what was the reasoning that caused you to enlist?
Sure. So I have a twin brother. We were both in honors and AP classes in high school, probably above average marks. And so we did very well on the ASVAB, which is the standardized test people take prior to joining the military. And if you get a good score on that, then it qualifies you for particularly challenging jobs or technical jobs. And we both scored well on it. I think Steven scored a couple points higher than me, but I think it was a 98. I think he scored a 98 and maybe I scored like a 96. I can't remember exactly, but it was pretty good. And many towns have recruiters, and recruiters visit high schools and they see your ASVAB scores. So we probably had them salivating at getting he and I in. And because of our scores, we qualified for a nuclear engineering program in the Navy. It's called the nuke program. And it's a 6-year commitment, but that's because it's on the front end. It's about a 1.5 to 2 years of training. And sorry, I'm getting a call. Let me decline that bad boy. All right. Sorry. And so we, in our either junior year or senior year, we did get accepted into Georgia Tech and had full rides, but we got some intentional misinformation from our recruiter, which persuaded he and I to both enlist. So basically they lied to us, put it on paper and everything. And we tried to get out, or at least I did, based on that. But they're like, no, it's not in your original contract. It doesn't matter. And I will say that I do think these kind of stories are far fewer now. So if anybody's out there debating whether or not to join the military or you think you're going to get bamboozled, I think that happens far less often. But even then, we were at boot camp and then we both applied for ROTC scholarships. So we enlisted, spent 11 months at boot camp, saw snow for the first time in our lives and shoveled it on, I think, Thanksgiving morning at 4 o'clock, and then got on a plane and ended up in Orlando. That's probably one of the best emotional days of my life. You just getting away from boot camp and to greener pastures in Orlando. But we did apply for ROTC scholarships, and he got accepted into the University of Florida. So he's a Gator, and I got accepted at Vanderbilt University. So that's when we started the officer pipeline. And I went on to graduate and got commissioned in December of '01 as an ensign and spent 20 years in. Stephen, he went to Florida for a while and then got out, decided he didn't want to finish that program. So he got out, finished some of his enlisted career, and still served later in the Air Force Reserve in our hometown of Warner Robins, Georgia. So that's how we got in. Is that short enough answer for you?
Yeah. I'm just curious, like, how did they lie to you? Because you didn't really explain what happened there.
Yeah, so they told us that if we enlist first and then get into this program to go to college, then they'll get a housing allowance that would be represented at that time at like a couple $1,000s a month, or maybe not quite that much, but maybe $1,500 a month. And then procedurally, that was just incorrect. And yeah, and I guess, naive me, it was their handwriting on a piece of paper and it wasn't formalized and all that stuff. So, you live and learn, naive. But here I am 20 years later and life's pretty good. So you kind of just got to make the best decisions you can at the time with the information that you have and keep moving forward. I've had my opportunities to get out since then. Nobody has to stay in the military for 20 years. But I chose to do that because every time my time came up to whether to decide to get out or stay in, I believe the pivotal moment was in 2007, 2008. I had just spent a year in Iraq and I was wanting to get out, but the economy was pretty rough. And a guy like me with an education degree and social studies degree, making what I made, and I didn't want to step out and start making $36,000 a year while rewarding, toughed it out and stayed in the military and pushed through to 20.
Yeah. Now, if I remember correctly, there's an interesting story behind Vanderbilt and how you got there. I could be misremembering, but I remember you making some sort of statement and being like, I don't know how I got in there.
Well, it is interesting how I get in. I don't think I've ever told the story. I do know what you're alluding to, but I'll give you another angle of the story that you're alluding to. So whenever I got accepted, whenever the Navy said, yeah, you got good grades, we'll temporarily discharge you and send you to Vanderbilt. But wait, you can't go to Vanderbilt because it costs too much and we don't want to pay for you. And I was like, but you have to, because I didn't apply anywhere else. You got to. So I'm on the phone in my house in Middle Georgia talking to somebody from Vanderbilt. And I'm like, you got to. And I guess they felt bad for me. So they accepted me and I was talking to somebody from the Navy. And so I finally got them to agree with that. But they didn't know I was only put on the wait list at Vanderbilt. So here I am playing the middle. And I was like, okay, now I got to call Vanderbilt or send them a letter or something. And I can't remember. I think back then I actually did send a letter. I think that's how it worked back then. But I may have called. And the bottom line is I pleaded enough that everybody let me in. And that's why I say I was lucky enough to get in. I was very lucky to get in, even luckier to graduate. I'm a smart guy, but man, those people at Vanderbilt, they're on a different level. I remember my freshman year, I think out of 20 people in my freshman hall at Vanderbilt, 6 of them had perfect on their SAT scores and they made it look easy. And then I'd be going to classes. I'm like, I have no idea what this instructor's talking about. Hence the change of major after my freshman year to education and social studies, for which I'm very glad I did, because I always knew I wanted to teach too.
One of the most common questions I get is whether or not I take pre-workout before I exercise. And the answer is I freaking love a good pre-workout. And the pre-workout that I use is veg pre-workout. Not only does it taste super freaking delicious, but it's packed with really high quality ingredients that give me laser-like focus, incredible clean energy, and best of all, no crash afterwards. And I'm actually a part of the Veg Elite Athlete team. And before I joined the team, I wanted to make sure that the company and the people behind the company were vision, mission, and value aligned with myself. I got to know the owners. I even got to know the person who formulates all of their products, and they passed with flying colors. They're such an awesome team of people that really are on a mission to empower people to live better. Literally, that's their mission. And I not only use the veg pre-workout, but I love to stack it with their nitro pump, which just gives an incredible pump to every single workout. You know, when you're just muscles are feeling super full, you're looking vascular and just looking good and ready to flex. And the cool thing about Nitro Pump is if you are caffeine sensitive or don't like to have caffeine in your pre-workout, you can just have the Nitro Pump stand alone by itself. Or if you like me and you want to double down, you do some veg pre-workout stacked with the Nitro Pump, and it's going to be an incredible workout. So if you want to save 15% on your order of pre-workout and Nitro Pump, go to vegnutrition.com/dragon and use code DRAGON at checkout to get 15% off every single order. They also make an incredible creatine product that has adaptogenic mushrooms in it. They have delicious plant protein powder and a whole lot more. So definitely go check out vegnutrition.com/dragon and use code DRAGON at checkout to get 15% off. It's funny, I have somewhat of a similar story with Stanford, because when I got to Stanford, like, there's just people there that are so ridiculously brilliant, like, where I don't even have to, like, I just couldn't compete. Like, so I had to, the only way I could compete was just like, I just had to work hard, right? And, you know, not do well in some of the classes that are just like, you know, weighted. God, what is it called when they rank you against everyone else in the class? Anyways,
A bell curve or something?
yeah, those classes I definitely was like nice in the middle of the pack, but only because I was working my ass off. So, well, that's a good story. I think it's interesting what we can make happen if we just like make the extra effort, right? You could have just said like, oh, this isn't going to work out, but I think, you know, one of your qualities or character traits is like you're tenacious, right? It's like it takes a lot of time to like go through 20 years in the military, you know, and get that pension. Like a lot of people dip out beforehand, and you also, you know, have been really smart about your money. So that tenacity and that kind of, you know, discipline is definitely one of your hallmark qualities. So I'm curious, when and why did you start investing in real estate?
I bought my first rental property in 2011 in Middle Georgia. It's in our hometown, and I know that area well. And it also just happens to be a really good place to purchase rental properties, even more so then than now, as in most places. You know, it's kind of the ideal rental cities have kind of become fewer and fewer over the last decade or so as the real estate markets have shot up. It crunches that profit margin. But my first property was purchased as a single story, single family home, ranch style, brick, built in the 50s. And I just did it because I always wanted to do it. I didn't really know that much about rental properties at that time. And I'm not sure exactly where I was living at the time either. I think I was in San Diego. I was stationed in San Diego doing my department head tour as chief engineer on a ship at that time. So I was busy, so I wasn't really able to go manage it or anything. But that's why my brother's from there, and he helped out a lot. So, and over the course of the next few years, I ended up purchasing a few more, got a few more good deals. And at the peak, I owned 7 properties. And as I was getting closer to retirement, I know I didn't want to add more moving parts. I wanted to embrace simplicity. So while the math says I probably should have kept all the properties and fixed them up and rent them forever, I was just trying to embrace simplicity. And I selected the properties that I thought would need the least amount of maintenance and balanced with the return that I was getting from them. And I sold a few properties, paid off the other liens. So currently have 4 paid off properties in Middle Georgia, providing about $3,600 a month gross. And as far as why real estate, at that point in my career, I was already contributing to a thrift savings plan, or most very like a 401k. And so I had a nice little chunk of change there, and I knew that I would continue to invest in that going forward up until retirement. And at that point, I didn't know I was going to stay in the military for 20. That's only marked just past the half point of my career. And some of those jobs, even though outside looking in, you're like, oh my gosh, it's only 9 more years. But some of those jobs are very, very tough. And it pushes some people out because they just don't want to deal with it anymore, even after they put so much time in. They're looking forward, and even whether it's 4 years left or 6 years left or 9 years left, it can feel like a long time, and it does take some of these jobs really do take a toll, and for some people it's just not worth pushing through. But I didn't know if I was going to stay in, so of course, me being the planner that I am, how am I going to get cash flow when I'm no longer in the military? And so real estate is a viable option, especially at that time with those kind of deals.
Gotcha. So this is something I've been evaluating for a long time, and I've had several guests on the show
Hmm.
and just talked about it. And I always love to kind of just pick my guest's brain just to kind of get their input. So someone like me, like I'm constantly like, oh, should I get a rental property or multiple rental properties? And the full story is like both my brother and I own my mother's home, and she collects rent on it, but that pays for her living. So eventually we'll collect the rent, but right now it takes care of, it's basically like her retirement money, so to speak, support her cost of living. But she more or less kind of manages it. You know what I mean? We help out screening tenants and, help out when needed, but like it's pretty much hands off. And you know me pretty well. Like, you know what I really love to do and what I'm passionate about. And there's a part of me that wants to kind of like diversify more into real estate. And then there's another part of me that is like, I'm just going to keep socking my money away in, low fee index funds because it's just like I don't have to think about it, right? So I'm just curious as like a friend and someone who's, both in financial independence community, in real estate, as well as invested in the stock market, kind of like if you were to give me mentorship or coaching,
Hmm.
like what are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I know you're not a low income earner. I know you have other passions that you continuously, like this podcast or this video blog or helping others. I know you're doing coaching now too. So I know you have other passions. And every time we decide to do something else, it takes up a little bit more that mental bandwidth, and not potentially in a negative way, but also potentially a negative way. It becomes a burden. It becomes something on a to-do list, something that you have to care for and take action on. And that takes your resources, whether it's time, money, or effort. And so I think you really have to think about the objective. I don't know your exact numbers, and I'm not asking you for them now to share them. I'm just saying I know you're not a low earner. And so if your objective is a number, and it should be, people need to know what their number is, whatever that is for them. If you can get to that number with conservative estimates, the simplest way possible, which is, just as JL Collins says, the simple path to wealth, is to just funnel money to index funds and just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. That is the simplest way. That's the fewest moving pieces. That's the least amount of mental bandwidth once you understand why you're doing what you're doing and that you're comfortable doing that. And that's what I would advise. And if you can get to your number with just simply index funds in a reasonable time, whatever that means to you, then I would absolutely go that route. Now, if there's if you have that inkling, or if there's a person out there that has that inkling, like I just love real estate, I love bigger pockets, I've read all the books, like just want to try it, then try it. Then try it. Just know that there's absolutely nothing passive about real estate. It's not the hardest way to make money, but it's not passive. And depending on, especially when you're new, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to get the bleeding heart tenant and you're going to give in, and then they're not going to pay rent for 6 months. And then it's your fault because you weren't hard enough, is it? And if you don't have to deal with all that stuff, just don't deal with it. Just keep investing in index funds and call it good.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I've already hit my financial independence number, kind of like the first level. There's that kind of, many of us like to move the goalpost, right? So there is a part of me that wants to own like a super nice house in the Bay Area, which is going to cost a few million. So like, if I want to do that and remain financially independent, I have to continue to accumulate wealth. But fortunately, I've kind of had the conversation with my wife. It's like, it's okay if it takes us a little longer to get to that level of financial independence, that kind of like fat fire level in the Bay. Now, we could immediately move to lower cost of living area and, live in a very nice house. But we love California. So we're kind of like willing to, pay a higher cost of living and go a little bit slower on kind of like the home ownership journey.
Hmm.
And right now, like we moved to Santa Cruz because we're trying to figure out like, do we want to like live here long term? And so like I'm okay renting here for a couple of years to kind of really feel out like, does this place feel like the place that we want to like own long term? And freedom is, my number one personal value. And I know like right now I don't even want to own a home because I just wouldn't feel free, because I'd feel like fuck, like I'm locked into this place. And though you can move and own a home, it's a lot more work to like either sell it or turn it into a rental. And the thing that I'm really maximizing for right now is life happiness, life satisfaction. I'm not optimizing for a number anymore. I was up until, I kind of reached my first, financial independence level. But now I'm like, how do I build the best life where the most of my time is doing things that just truly light me up? So,
Yeah, and in order to have, I would think in order to have, and I've gone through that a little bit myself over the last few years. In order to have an environment that you can do that, you actually have to push things intentionally out that don't align with that. And I would think that dealing with rental properties is not in line with that. Like unless you just love doing it. Unless there's something that you get from doing it. Like some people like certain jobs, other people don't like. Like some people just drawn to certain things, and that's fine. But right now we're talking, I think, specifically of the X's and O's of real estate investment, not like the spiritual connection or an emotional commitment to real estate as a driving internal passion. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about how to get there from here. And I think usually the simplest way is the best for balancing lifestyle.
yeah. And, I recognize real estate is a tool that one could use to get to financial independence really fast if you're very driven and smart and strategic, because you can utilize leverage, right? So, but it is like you said, I think a lot of people believe falsely that real estate can be passive. And I think unfortunately, a lot of real estate people like to make it seem like it's very passive, or that it could be, even though they choose not to make it passive for themselves. So I appreciate you talking about that.
Now, I will say you're looking at real estate as an asset class to provide a purpose in your portfolio. There are ways to do that that are not owning your own home. But then I would also say you're going to get more profits if you own your own home. So like, or own rental properties. But if you are looking for something real estate that's more passive than actually owning and operating and managing your own rental properties, then you can go REITs, or, syndicates or things like that. And just REITs, people can Google that, and, or syndicates. But yet to be a syndicate, I believe you have to be an institutional investor, which means I think a net worth of greater than $1 million. There might be some other exceptions, I'm not sure. But there are things out there that one could pursue to use real estate as part of their portfolio to serve a purpose in their portfolio without actually owning and operating properties direct.
Yeah, and I've been kind of considering syndication just as like one way to like diversify my money. But again, it's like it just takes more work, more mental bandwidth. And you mentioned that I, started this podcast and started coaching, and I'm also like part of a Stanford startup. Like that's the one thing I noticed when I launched both the podcast and the coaching. I just like their mental load on me is significantly higher because I went from one thing to three things. And like the first few months, I was exhausted every time, even though I wasn't working crazy hours. I was still going to bed plenty early, get enough sleep. But by the time I get to the weekend, I would just be like so mentally, emotionally drained. And I kind of liken it to like when you start a new workout program that you've never done before. The first kind of couple weeks, it's like exhausting because you're having to learn
Mm-hmm.
how to do every exercise. You have to have like really pay attention. You have to like really use your mind to be like, okay, am I doing this lift right? But then a few weeks in, it's like your body knows what it's doing and the mental load kind of like lessens, except for like in
Mm-hmm.
business. I think it's a lot longer than a few weeks. I think it's more like several months or even over a year before you start to kind of like, okay, I've built up the, mental, emotional strength to handle this load. And that's been a big kind of a journey for me this last year or so.
Yeah, I think that what you bring up a good point about habits and then how you respond at the beginning of something versus after you already established. So for example, you were talking about working out, and I know you work out very religiously. That's not, but let's talk about the normal person who may not work out as often or may not prioritize currently their physical fitness. If you decide to start program, and we can talk about any habit that you want to change to better yourself. But in this case, let's focus on fitness. If you front load it with all the weight of like, I need to go in and do all these different exercises, and you have 2 pages of a schedule and all of that, then you're going to get burnt out really, really quick. Not only that, you're going to hurt your body probably too. And it's going to take a lot more time to recover. Whereas you were talking about like, you're already in decent enough shape, you shift your program, it takes 2 weeks to adjust, but you're not starting from zero. If you're starting from zero, just getting in the gym, that needs to be the goal. Don't start talking about all the weights that you're going to do. Just walk in and do something for 2 weeks, and then add, and then add, and then how your brain reacts to that is it's not thinking about how hard it is to go to the gym. It's because it's now normal to you. So no longer have that obstacle of thought or that hurdle of like, I don't want to do it, because you've set the bar low at the very beginning, or at least not complicated. Just put your feet inside the gym. If that's your goal, at the end of 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is, you're likely going to be in better shape, and you're going to do it with a lot less mental weight of, I really didn't do this curl exactly 100% correct on my third set with the 45-pound dumbbells. Like if you start thinking about all those things, then it's going to grow into something that's not pleasant until you're ready for it. And then it's not going to seem like a big hurdle then, because you've already gone through all of the little bitty steps to get there, that it's not going to feel like a burden or weight.
Yeah.
Pun, I guess intended.
Yeah. The next product and show sponsor that I want to tell you about is Feel Free by Botanic Tonics. And this is unlike anything I've ever had before. It is made with kava root and other ancient plants, and it puts me into this incredible state of focused flow, creativity, and productivity. And I take just half a shot before I work out or before I do like an intense bout of work, and I just have to get a ton of shit done. So just half a shot. You don't need any more than that. They also actually make travel-friendly capsules if that's more your speed or your style, but I freaking love the Feel Free plant-based tonic that comes in a really cool little blue bottle, and I just take half this bottle before I work out or before an intense work session. And if you want to get $40 off your first order, just go to botanictonics.com and use code DRAGON at checkout. So seriously, I actually stacked this with my pre-workout, and my workouts are just like a whole nother world, and it's incredible, and I freaking love it. So if you want a powerful combination of products to use, definitely add in the Feel Free, just half a shot, to whatever pre-workout mix that you're taking, and it will just amplify it to the next level. So again, if you want to save $40 off your first order, go to botanics.com and use code DRAGON. I think it's the same thing like starting a business or even like starting investing or, getting into real estate. There's kind of like an upfront cost that you have to just be willing to pay and invest. And then eventually you start to get like develop skill and kind of wisdom within that field of endeavor. And then it gets easier, so to speak. And the best way to, learn anything is to do it, right? So for a long time, we talked about this off air, but I was like, I'm going to teach myself how to like edit a podcast so I can like just do everything. And I told myself that for about like 8+ years. And then I was like, I'm never going to freaking start a podcast unless I just outsource this. So, that's kind of what I would, compare that to like for the people who are like where fitness is so scary that like even going to the gym and like finding a program online, just work with a coach. Like they'll help you kind of like bridge that like that gap of like the unknown, the fear of the unknown. And then, you work with a coach for a while and then eventually you're like, okay, now I really know how to do this. They've helped me build a new mindset, a new lifestyle. Like I know when you're working on your fitness journey, when I was visiting, you're working with a coach, and it seemed like it like really empowered and inspired you a lot, right? And you're a super smart dude, super disciplined. You could have done it on your own, but like you chose to get a coach. I'm just curious, why did you decide to get a coach?
because I wasn't doing it on my own.
Ah,
That's why I got a coach. I put money where my mouth is because I wasn't doing it.
hmm,
Yes, I've loved working out, and being physically fit has been something of a priority my entire adult life. But now that I had more time and I could plan it all out, just like I was talking about before, I could plan my workouts, but I still had to walk out the door and get into the gym. And I needed somebody to hold me accountable just to get into the gym. Maybe not needed. I wanted because I want to take that burden off of me. And because I didn't want to let either my wallet down or the person who's showing up at 11 o'clock a.m. on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I don't want to let that person down because that's just maybe how I operate. I don't want to, it's one thing for me to let myself down during a day, but like I don't want to let someone else down. So you link up with somebody else, and that's the power of doing things as partners or getting a coach, just to add another dynamic that just helps you get there quicker.
100%. That's exactly what I did. So not only did I pay like a production team, like I got a coach to help me work through the fact that I haven't launched a podcast. Like I worked with a breakthrough coach who literally like held me accountable. And, I could make excuses to myself all day long, but it's like I paid this person to help me achieve this goal. Like I'm going to make sure I get my money's worth, right? And it's
Hmm.
weird when you do that, when you put your own skin in the game. It's just like it does
Yeah.
something psychologically that just like forces you to like, finally start to take the action that you've been telling yourself that you should do or you will do, but you just keep making up excuses after excuses. And, you mentioned partner. That's so similar thing I did with my coaching program is like I wanted to do a coaching program for 5+ years. I actually tried to do it, never got off the ground, unfortunately, which was heartbreaking the first time. But then I got approached by a friend who was like, he just randomly, we were talking one time and I was like, I've always wanted to do fitness and money coaching. And he was like, oh, really? We should talk. And now he's my business partner. So not only did I get a partner, but then I also joined a mastermind that was like the coaching edition mastermind. So it's like, I think a lot of times people think that you have to do everything on your own without any support. And that is kind of like one area where like I love the financial independence community. Like I consider myself a part of it, but I feel like one of the reasons that it is such a kind of like a niche, there's not a lot of people in the movement compared to how many people there are in the world, right? And I think there is a certain segment of people that have a certain type of mindset or life journey that can really get on board and do like the FI thing by themselves just by reading blog articles, listening to podcasts, etc. But they're like to me the 5%. The other 95%, they need a coach, they need some sort of support system that empowers them, just like you, like as an example, like you're super smart, like how to like go work out and follow a training program, but you just needed a little bit more support to kind of like break through. And that's kind of how I feel about like the 95% of people with their money is there's like, sure, some people will find the FI community and they'll take action on it and it'll transform their life. But most people like see it, like see the FI community and they're like, I don't get it. They don't get on board. And you and I see you laughing and smiling because how many people have we talked to, especially when we first figured out about FI, tried to share it with everyone and they literally are like, okay, get away from me. You're
It's,
scaring me.
it's, yes, I have many of those stories, and it's tough because there's financial independence is such a linear thing. It's not hard at all to understand once you like get it. Because we all remember when, for me, it was reading the Mr. Money Mustache, the shockingly simple math behind early retirement, I think is the exact name. So your audience can take a look at that. But it's so direct and the numbers are so there. And it's so much unlike in the past where, advisors out there tell you work hard, save 10 to 15% of your money, and you can retire at 62 and go play golf and hope you don't die immediately after. But what was the objective? Like there was no objective. It's just save this percent. No why. No like there was no 4% rule discussion. There was no understanding like withdrawal. There's It's just save, save, save. And with when Pete's article came out, or when I read it, it had been out probably a number of years before I read it, but it finally gave a goalpost. It finally gave a number and why and the reasoning behind it. That's the first time I'd ever seen that. So yes, I might have been inclined and liking money stuff and learning about money and helping people with money. But when you know the objective, and it is a number, and each person has their own number. And on top of that, there are some general paths like low cost broad market index funds and rental real estate and entrepreneurship. Like there are some very specific paths that can get you there. And and then you have a whole community out there that holds your hand through it all for nothing. They just want to see you succeed. To me, I don't know why you would ever want to shun any bit of that, but it's not the masses. So you do have neighbors that will continue to, even you have conversations with them next week, they show up with their new Forerunner or whatever it is, like new big car and their big house. And that's fine. And that's fine. And I've had to really catch myself not being so preachy about it. I am very passionate about it. You can probably hear my voice in the last 30 seconds of talking that I believe in it so much because I've seen it help so many people's lives, including my own. And then one of the greatest things about it is it doesn't just help you, your life. It's going to help your kids and their kids. And it comes from a place of like rational thought. It's not like, let me go out and do something really risky and get lucky and have a multi-million-dollar business. And then without any kind of fundamental knowledge to like keep it going to the next generations. So love the fact that it's got very sound principles. It's based in math. Math is a good thing. I wish we would focus more on that. But it's got to turn into something real and something in your daily habits. And that's where it doesn't. That's where the break happens. That's where you don't make those connections because they love going out to get that big platter of Chick-fil-A for $120 or I don't know. And it's what people value. And so I think if people could just pause for a second, really figure out what they value, and then align their resources to what they say they value, at least at the time, then I think you'll live a much more purposeful and focused life because you align your money, time, and energy towards what you say you value. It makes the decision making, what you do with those things, with your resources, much, much easier, much clearer.
Yeah, it's fitness is math too. And this is why I love teaching like fitness and money to, my coaching clients together is because it's like it all makes like perfect sense on paper. It's the implementation. And that's what like we pay, I invest in coaching, you invest in coaching. That's what we're paying for is the implementation, whether it's the accountability, the structure, the knowledge, the empowerment to like build a new lifestyle, right? To build a new weekly routine. It's the implementation, right? Because like basically you can find anything on the internet these days. Like if you want to learn how to do anything, real estate, get a six pack or whatever. Transitioning to kind of your post-fi journey. So you've been financially independent for officially retired for the last 2 years and living off your financial independence. So talk to me about that. We have this looming recession. Are we in a recession? Like, what are your thoughts around that? Like, how have you kind of been living the last 2 years, and how you feel about that?
Well, San Diego, and as where you are too, it's a very high cost of living. So I will say it's an absolute test of whether or not your financial independence plan is working or not. We were just talking before we came on air today how I think we were trading like war stories on our rent bills. So yeah, it's definitely something San Diegans in particular, but Californians in general are aware of. So for personal reasons, I ended up retiring here. I'll probably be here until my son turns 18 or so, and that's another 9 years. So definitely a good test. And you try to balance all of those things, lifestyle with where you're living, what are you living in, what kind of place are you living in, and you just make those kind of decisions as you go along. But so far, so good with the financial independence plan. I'm still able to. We all go through different transitions when we retire, but many savers probably do this too, and you might hear some other stories from other people, but I still felt like I needed to do something to still continue building my net worth. And I know that my lump sum and my thrift savings plan is going to grow at 8 to 10% a year. I know that based on, conservative assumptions that we use for financial planning, but still I felt like I needed to actively do something. So just something as simple as how I overcame that was I just still like invest like $600 a month of my money into just a brokerage account going into VTSAX. So, But so that made me that helped appease that little part of me that says, "David, you should still be doing something because you can. Just keep doing something." This probably doesn't even make a dent in my overall long-term financial picture, but for me mentally and emotionally. So all those little things that you go through as an individual, just trying to figure out ways to satisfy those things after giving much thought. But overall, I'm not going negative, so that's good. I'm breaking even probably and still do well with a $50,000 year pension and my rental income. And I've got some disability from the military. And so all of those are doing just fine in helping me keep my head above water. And doing that in San Diego is a success. Sometimes just not drowning is a success.
Another question that I get all the time is, what is my favorite protein bar? And the answer to that question is the No Cow protein bars. Now, they are freaking delicious. They taste like candy bars. I'm not even joking, especially the dipped version. And they're packed with protein, literally 20 to 22 grams of protein per bar, and really awesome macros. So only around 190 to 210 calories per bar, low fat, really awesome amount of fiber, which helps you to stay feeling full. And the reason I love them so much is because of the incredible ingredient profile, as well as the fact that they're actually very low in fat and calories. So the ugly truth is that most protein bars are actually fat bars in disguise, except for the no cow bars, because they're actually truly are low fat, packed with fiber and packed with protein. So if you want to get 15% off your No Cow bars, just go to nocow.com and use code DRAGON at checkout. My favorite flavors, just so you know, are the chocolate mint cookie, the dipped version, and the chocolate salted caramel, also the dipped version. Now, you can get a variety pack if you want to try all of them. I highly recommend the dipped version. And this is my favorite thing to have as dessert, to be honest, before I head off to bed, is a no cow bar. And funny enough, if you want to know a little secret trick to make it taste even better, is stack it with a brown rice cake. And it literally tastes like chocolate goodness mixed with popcorn. And it is just like next level dessert that is super healthy, nutritious, and packed with protein. So if you want to save 15% off, go to nocow.com and use code DRAGON at checkout. Yeah, not a cheap place to live, but a beautiful place that I believe, I think California, it's worth living in California for the extra expense, because it's just, the weather, other than this winter, the weather year round is pretty incredible. And it's just such an incredible lifestyle. And, for me, like living in California is part of my rich life, because like I could go to a lower cost of living area and, buy like a super nice house, but then I would not be living in a place where like one of the most important things to me is the year round weather. Right. I just want to I want to live in a place that like from a geographic perspective really like nourishes my spirit. And I also just love California because I think there's just so much more than just the physical geography. There's just so much opportunity. There's just, in all areas, whether it's fitness or entrepreneurship. I think the California lifestyle is just a really great lifestyle with a lot of opportunity.
There are definitely worse places to live than California, especially on the coast. So
yeah,
very nice.
Yeah, I grew up
but
in
as far
Washington.
As recession,
I grew up in Washington.
And so you got.
I grew up in Washington, and it's just too wet and cloudy for me. Like I was just like 9 months out of the year, it's either, cloudy, or I lived in a rain shadow. So it actually didn't rain that much, but it was cloudy for like 9 months. And that was just super depressing to me. So California sunshine like keeps me super happy.
And you're a very happy person. So I definitely would not want to take you from that.
So I'm curious,
you mentioned about a reset.
Do we have a delay going on right now?
I think you just like interrupting me.
Okay, go ahead.
No, there might be a delay. I don't know.
Tell us about the recession.
Okay, I don't know that there's a recession or not. I do know it sure as hell feels like it. I think when we have conversations like this on a podcast or on the news or people talk about recession, but I think what really matters is when you go into a store, how much money do you have in your pocket, and what are you trading that money for, and what value is that bringing to you? And I will say, I was out here, I don't know, probably over a year and a half ago, went into like a Rite Aid, and I remember near the front of the store they had a boxes of cereal for sale, and it was just like a regular medium, maybe small size box of cereal, and it's like on sale. I think it was like Raisin Bran Crunch or something. It's like on sale, $5.30. I'm like, on sale, $5.30, and it was just like this little bit box of. I was like, people must be making $50 an hour to work now. Nope. So I don't know how. I really don't know how people are doing okay. I do know that the numbers say that as a whole, people's got more credit card debt now than ever in history, and houses are costing a much larger portion of people's budget than ever in history. And I just don't know how this can end. And then you don't have the wage growth across the board. I just don't know how this is going to end well. It's got to slow down. I think earnings and stuff came out today, and I think the time that we started recording this, it was down a little bit. But I'm not trying to guess or predict what's going to happen in the market. But I would be surprised if it goes up. I don't know how it can keep going up. But people have been saying this for the last 5 years. But unlike the last 5 years, the last 2 years have been kind of or at least the last year and a half have been a little more pointed, and definitely there's some indicators pointing to some hardship there. It's tough for people out there, and it makes it all the more important to really understand what you're trading your money for and to really be intentional about it.
Yeah, speaking of being intentional, I'm curious, like, having no paid work for the last
Mhm.
2 years, what have you been doing with your time?
It's great. So I prioritize sleep a lot more now. I do have my son every other week, so that's great. I'm able to take him and pick him up from school. Some parents may not have that ability, so I'm very fortunate in that I can be there to go to his award ceremonies and events at school if need be. I'm glad to have that flexibility, and that's another great reason to aim for financial independence if you have children. And what have I been doing with my time? Focusing on fitness. We've talked about that. I've also started taking classes. About 15 years ago, I was big into music and created a bunch of instrumentals. And the production value, I was self-taught, so the production value wasn't like the lead or anything like that, but I had a lot of fun and brought me a lot of joy. So now that I had some time, I actually bought and built an in-home studio so that I can get back to making music. In order to do that, once again, I wasn't teaching myself Logic Pro or Pro Tools, even though I went and got a book and I had all the stuff right in front of me. But much like working out, sometimes you just need a boost, something more formal to get you going. And I just needed something to get me over that hump so I can get back in and get familiar with using the software. And so I started using the GI Bill to take classes at San Diego City College for commercial music production. So I did that last semester as a full-time student. And this semester, I am focusing on video editing and some other like news broadcast stuff just for like general camera work if I ever want to start a YouTube channel to support Fiology or a podcast. And so whereas you were just talking about how you didn't want to learn those things, we all know that there's like the sub skill sets of doing things like you're doing right now. And so I wanted to know enough to at least get a 80% solution out there should I decide to do that. And I didn't want my skill ability to be the limiting factor of whether I actually pursued it or not. And my son, he actually just started a YouTube channel. I helped him start a YouTube channel, and I didn't teach him video editing. I actually paid one of my classmates to come in. He's 20, one of my classmates, and he does all this kind of stuff. So it's really great to hear my son talk to a 20-year-old man sitting at the computer, and my son's picking it up like that. So it's pretty amazing. And I think we just posted his 5th video yesterday. So he's all about it. He's like, how many more subscribers do I have today? I was like, you got 16, buddy. It's growing. So those are all those little things I've been doing with my time. I do, is weirdly enough, enjoy cleaning. So I do spend an inordinate amount of time cleaning my place. Just kind of one of those kind of people. I don't know if you can attest to that or vouch for me in that regard, but I try not to fit too much in my day. But every time you do that, you end up doing a lot. Still, like today, I'm going to meet somebody to walk on the beach, and then I'm going to pick up my son, and then I'm going to play tennis later. And so, yeah, it fills your time up. But the difference is you fill it up with stuff that you want to do, not stuff that you feel like you have to do. And again, I don't know how many times in this conversation we've advertised financial independence, but that even the people who even people in this niche that are going to listen to this podcast, the majority probably won't take a lot of action towards it. So you got to get in, you got to get those few wins, and you got to start establishing those habits. And once you actually see that trend line of net worth going up, and then it opens up a little bit more in believability and that you can actually accomplish it. And then that's when you're all in.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. David definitely keeps his place super clean. I love to hear that you're investing in your growth and education. So, in addition to getting like coaching, like going back to school and like learning skill sets that bring you joy. And, maybe you'll start producing my podcast into a YouTube video version, because right now it's only audio with just like a still image cover on YouTube. But I've been wanting to go full video. But unlike you, I'm not going to go back to school to learn it, because I just know it's the same thing as like producing this audio. Like I'm just never going to do it. So I need to pay someone to do it. So maybe I can negotiate like a FI rate with you, and you can get a part-time job. And so you could invest more than $600 a month and make yourself feel even better.
We'll have this conversation.
Yeah. We'll do that one offline.
I'm not sure if I can beat a Fiverr person as far as the deal.
True story. You do live in California. Yep. Awesome. Well, I know you got that beach walk coming up, and, I really appreciate you sharing your time and energy with me. Couple last questions. So you and I talked about this off air, but one of the things that I really am passionate about sharing is like an actionable like tip, tool, or strategy for fitness, for money, and for life. So do you have any thoughts that you could share with us?
Yeah, for fitness, we're all where we are right now, whether we're overweight, underweight, lack muscle, have too much muscle in your case. No, I'm just kidding. But we're where we're at right now. We're all starting from somewhere. And if you have a physical goal or a desire, my first tip would be measure something for a month. Measure something, whether it's your every day on a scale, whether it's tracking your calories, whether it's just writing down what you're eating for food and not calories or macros. But pick something. If you're unfamiliar and is just now getting into it, do something as simple as just step on the scale every day and walk in the gym every day. Do that. Don't think about anything else. Everything else will come. Measure something monthly. A month is about enough time for you to figure out if something is working or not working for you. And sometimes just the act of recording something changes the behavior subconsciously. Just writing down what you're eating, maybe not even the calorie count or the macros, anything. Just writing down what you're eating makes you more conscious of your behavior. And that can happen subliminally. So track something. And then after a while, like your routine will get pretty locked in, and then you can start tracking different things. And what that allows you to do is get data points, and then you can make minor adjustments, not huge lifestyle swing adjustments, minor adjustments over time, and just keep adjusting until you get your goal. And you'll find that you're going to get there much sooner than later. And even if it takes you 2 years to get to your goal, that's not a long time. That's pretty fast, and you got to it. So it's not going to happen overnight. Minor course changes over time, but do it based on data. As far as money, automate. I like to say the purpose of financial independence is to forget about money. If you automate it, you can actually focus on things that you want to worry about, unless you just love this money stuff, and so few do. But I will say that there's probably a lot more fun things out there than talking about index funds and expense ratios and asset classes, like surfing maybe, or playing a guitar or something. So automate. And then set reminders. So say you're just now starting to contribute to your 401k and you're putting up to the match. If you haven't matched, very few employers even have matches anymore. But put in what you're going to put in, and then put a reminder. Like as soon as you do this, put a reminder for 6 months from now, and just say the reminder says up 2%, and then go in, and then put a reminder in your calendar again for 6 months later, up 2%. Like 2% could be it going into a Roth or whatever. There are like some more ideal ways to where to place your money when you get to the max limits of each of these accounts. But do something as a reminder often and make small changes. You're not going to feel the pinch, and you're going to realize like sooner than later that you've got that upward swing of net worth, really without even doing a whole lot more work. And then the third thing I would say about life, give yourself grace. It's only time. If you try something and you don't like it, then stop doing it. Like whether it's learning how to play a ukulele or trying to figure out a Rubik's Cube, whatever it is, something you say you want to do, try it out. one of a few things are going to happen. Either you're going to love it and you're going to keep going with it and you're going to build that intrinsic passion for it, or some months are going to go by. You're going to get a basic skill level. You will have felt accomplished for what you did. And you're going to say, okay, I'm no longer passionate about that anymore. And that's okay. It's not a loss. It just gives you more time now to go do something else that you think might be fun. So give yourself some grace. It's okay to quit things that aren't bringing you value or joy anymore.
This show is brought to you by Fit Rich Life Coaching. But wait a minute, Dragon. Isn't this your coaching program? Heck yeah, it is. I literally spent the last 15 to 20 years trying to figure out how to get fit and how to get rich. And I finally figured it out. It didn't happen, unfortunately, until my mid 30s. And one of the biggest reasons I created this fitness and money coaching program is because it's exactly what I was looking for when I was in my 20s and my 30s. And it is a proven game-changing fitness and money coaching program that will empower you to get in the best shape of your life and finally start achieving the financial success that you've been seeking. So, our members are having incredible transformations, literally getting in the best shape of their life. Some of them literally have paid off $50,000 of debt. Others have doubled their income. Others have learned how to travel hack and save tens of thousands of dollars on really incredible travel opportunities every year. And they're just leveling up in fitness, money, and life. So if you want to see if you're a fit for the program, you can just drop me a DM on Instagram with the words Fit Rich Life, or you can go to fitrichlife.com/coaching and book your free consultation today. So you can message me on Instagram to book a free consultation, or you can go to fitrichlife.com/coaching and book your free consultation today. So I'm on a mission to empower people to get in the best shape of their life, to master their money, and to truly live their best life. So definitely come check us out. We'll talk and see if we're a good fit. And if so, just get ready for your life to transform. I love it. Yeah, that's one of the things I always recommend to clients is when they're looking for their passion, I'm like, just pursue your interests. And if an interest turns into a passion because you develop a certain level of skill and then you get even more fascinated with it, cool, you found your passion. If it doesn't, cool, you explored an interest, you're no longer into it, and you move on to the next. And eventually, if you keep trying, different things that are interesting to you, you will stumble upon something where not only are you interested in it, but you're also good at it and you enjoy getting better at it. And then eventually people will want to pay you for that.
Or worst case, you end up getting a fancy ukulele in your backdrop of your video that you never play.
Exactly.
But it's interesting to be there. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes you more of an interesting person because you're an interesting person.
Thank you so much, Justin.
Awesome. Well, David, any last thoughts, requests to the audience, words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
No, for people who, well, I'll say no and then I start talking. Yes. If you haven't started financial independent stuff, just start Googling it. Go to Fiology, which we didn't talk about that, but go there. That'll escort you through in a very, very step-by-step way. Fiology.com. It's my site. It's free. I'm not selling you anything. And just start taking some action and don't be paralyzed by the analysis. Just do something. You're going to make some mistakes, but get that marker moving in an upward direction as far as net worth, and then you'll find out that you have a lot more room for life later on.
Love it. And I believe you're off all social media, correct?
Yes. I did just go back in to I got like a little caricature thing because somebody was selling a condo down here and it looked like a really good deal. So I had to get back into Facebook to respond to it. But other than that, I've been off for over 6 months now, and it's great. I don't miss it one single bit.
Yeah, we'll see what changes if you start a YouTube channel. I was thinking about that before our recording. I'm like, okay, if you start a YouTube channel, if you want it to grow, you're gonna have to get on social media, but you'll cross that bridge when you get there.
Yeah, I think I would still just try to focus on doing YouTube really, really well and doing keyword research and doing and just taking whatever goes from there because it's going to be a trade-off. And I don't want to be logging on 5 different social media platforms, changing everything size-wise, going to Canva, doing all kinds of different graphics. It all takes time. And I'd rather probably just be sitting on the couch watching TV than doing those things.
Or walking the beach with a friend.
There you go.
The point I was getting to is, where's the best place to connect with you if they want to connect with you?
Okay, so just text Justin. He's got my number. I'm sure he would love to be the go-between. No. You can go to Fiology and just hit the contact, or just Google my name. I'm sure he'll have it in the show notes. And I got a unique last name. I'm easy to find.
Perfect.
And if you're ever in San Diego, hit me up. We'll go for a beach walk and have a drink.
Sounds good. David, thank you so much for coming on the show, brother.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in. And remember, literally everything can be used as an opportunity to learn, heal, grow, and transform. So whatever is going on in your life, choose to consciously and proactively harness that energy and use it to alchemize your life to the next level. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or on your favorite social media and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. You can find me at Justin David Carl on Instagram and all the socials, as well as at fitrichllife.com on the web. Until next time, sending you lots of energy and plenty of dragon magic.